provide an overview of the High Road Training Partnership Resilient Workforce Program application. Detailed information about the HRTP program as a whole, specific requirements about grant management, all that stuff. That can be found in the HRTP RWP solicitation. We'll refer to that as the request for applications or the RFA document throughout today's presentation. This webinar is not intended to provide us a step-by-step or detailed overview of the solicitation itself. Again, we're more focused on the actual application and application process. So here to present information about that and then answer your questions at the end of our call today. Again, we'll be accepting questions throughout the webinar via the chat. And then at the end of our time today, we'll open it up to questions from folks on the line if they want to just raise their hand and submit questions over the call. We'll take questions in both formats. But again, if you have questions now, you can start dropping those in the chat. If you have questions that come up as we're discussing the application, feel free to drop those in the chat, and our CWDB team will be tracking those, and we will get those as they come in. Shane, if you could go to the next slide here. So our agenda today, want to introduce the California Workforce Development Board staff that are part of the High Road Training Partnership grant making process, and then follow up after the grant process is over. We'll provide just a quick snapshot of the new HRTP RWP grant program, in particular some of the key differences in the 2023 version of the grant application compared to last year. Then we will do a quick walkthrough of the online application. We'll go through some of the exhibits and just talk about some of the key details there. And then at the end of our call today, we'll have about 45 to 50 minutes that's dedicated solely to your questions. So again, plenty of time for questions. Feel free to start dropping those in the chat as they pop in your head. As stuff gets resolved or new questions develop, feel free to continue to ask us questions in the chat. That's what our goal here today is, to resolve any questions you may have about how to apply for the new HRTP grant, and anything we can do to help make that process easy for you. Okay, so again, let's start with some intros of the California Workforce Development Board team here. I will kick it to Nick in the field team to introduce himself and the team.
Good morning, everyone. Nick Esquivel with the High Road Field Team. I am a member of, there's a group of about 8 of us that are here on this call. I'll popcorn it over to them here in a moment, but I just want to quickly talk about kind of the role and the work that we do. So as a member of the field team, we support high road projects by identifying, engaging with, and connecting stakeholders such as employers, worker representatives, community-based organizations, local workforce boards, state and government agencies, community colleges, local educational agencies, as well as other regional partners. We as a team of field specialists provide subject matter expertise in a variety of focus areas and industries. The field team assists with connecting key leaders throughout each region to further an infrastructure that will sustain the high road field team practice in the long term. So I'm going to popcorn, that was my introduction, a little brief description about what we as field specialists do. I'm going to popcorn it over to my colleague, Paul Aguiar.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Garrett. I'm a field specialist. I work alongside Nick and the rest of the team. I'm based out of the Inland Empire area, specifically the city of San Bernardino. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and popcorn it over to Jesse.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse Flores. I'm also a field specialist, so I work with Nick and Paul, and I'm based out of LA. I'll pass it on. Are there any other field specialists? I'll pass it on.
There may be Rafa, but Tanya will not be. So unless Rafa, that may be the extent of the team this morning, Mike.
Cool, thanks, field team.
Hi, everybody. Rafael Aguilera.
Thank
Off
you,
camera.
Rafa.
Thank you.
Hey, Rafa.
Hi, everybody.
All right, and then I will kick it to Danielle and Chan on the program team.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Danielle Viana, and I am one of the program implementation branch managers alongside Chan. People who have applied for past units, we're obviously all the program team, but you kind of worked with Chan's team. And then my unit is going to be the one overseeing this specific solicitation and group of projects for who's awarded. So for some background on the program branch, we're really responsible for grant administration, grant compliance, project management, technical assistance. So we work really closely with the field team. Your two major point of contacts, if you're awarded, you're going to have a field specialist, and then you're also going to have a point of contact as a project analyst and project manager on the program side. And so for us, you know, our major role is also contract monitoring. And so, you know, obviously you have your high road vision, your body of work, but then within that, you're given specific grant dollars, right? You're going to apply for them and you're awarded to do, you know, ABC in the next 24 months. And that's really where our team comes and focuses and really handles that grant management piece. And on the line, on behalf of my team, I have, and some of you may have worked with them before, I have Allison, I have, Tila's not on, but Tila is with us. She's out right now, but we have Megan, Haley, Stephanie, and Magali. And Magali and Stephanie are our two newest additions. So that's the team that if you're awarded, you'll be working with. And then, of course, we have Chan on the line, too, who's kind of been handling the past Resilient Workforce Fund. I don't know, Chan, if you want to say something.
Good morning. Yeah, I'll just be on providing some technical assistance if needed. But again, you know, RWFP will be handled by Danielle's branch. Those that have applied for RWF, I will be assisting those applicants.
Thank you, program team. I will introduce the solicitations team. My name is Mike Rosetta. I am manager of the solicitations unit. We also have Cheney Brown Patterson on the call, who's, thank you to Cheney for running the PowerPoint right now. Monique Cardona as well, who will be monitoring the chat. And Julissa Silva, who's our newest solicitations analyst. And just a quick note too, if you do have questions, during this presentation or throughout the call today, can you please direct those just to the group at large? I think some folks are getting direct messages, so if you could post those again to you know, publicly so everyone sees those, that'll help us track those and respond to you. And then lastly, I want to let Amina at ETP's CaliForce team introduce herself. Amina, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Amina Nasifovic and I'm part of the CaliForce team. I'll be walking you through the application today and just kind of helping you get to know the system.
Thanks, Amina. All right, Cheney, go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so want to touch on just a couple of key differences between this year's version of the HRTP grant program compared to last year. 2023 is the second year where CWDB will award HRTP funding on a quarterly cycle. In 2022, the application process consisted of a proposal step where CWDB would score and screen proposals, then invite projects that scored above our scoring threshold to submit a comprehensive application package. Under HRTP RWP, which is this year's grant program, there is no longer a proposal step. This is now a one-step application process. All applicants will submit a full application package, so that'll include budget exhibits, participant plans, etc. And those will all be scored, and then we'll review and move to award letters following all of our internal scoring processes. So again, just a single step for anyone who was an applicant last year. The grant proposal step is no longer just the one-step application process. Another couple key differences, which we'll discuss in more detail in the next slides here. We have delineated new project types, and we've identified priority industry sectors for new HRTP partnerships. So again, along with the move to a single step process, these definitions of project types is probably the most significant change to the HRTP grant process compared to last year. We've established 3 distinct classifications for applying projects. And you all can see the summaries of those project types here. And this will be a theme throughout today's presentation, but we strongly encourage everyone to read both the RFA and the application guide, which contain a lot more detailed information about the 3 project types. This is a very important thing for applicants to kind of understand upfront before applying, because the project type you select will inform the narrative questions you will be responding to on your application. And then, as you can see here, the 3 project types: planning and development. These are new projects. These will require, these projects require funding to just kind of complete upfront design work, and just move to a point where they're implementing training at a later point. The max award amount is $500,000, and the grant term for these will be 12 months. The training implementation project type, this is when actual training implementation starts to occur. So these projects will be delivering training to program participants to achieve employment and or career advancement outcomes for incumbent workers. Award range for this type of project, $500,000 to $5 million, with a max 12-month grant term. Lastly, we have the expanding project type. This is obviously the largest award range.
And I didn't know how you wanted to tape yet.
Up
So
to
now I've got to go.
up to 36 months for the grant term on the expanding project type. And these are existing HRTPs in most cases, or existing industry partnerships that can demonstrate they meet all HRTP elements, and they're expanding the partnership to either train more participants, expand into adjacent industry sectors, or expand the geographic reach of an existing program. So another change to the program this year, we have identified some key priority industry sectors that will be our targets for awarded projects in this cycle. You can see the list here. We've identified priority sectors based on those with current and or projected openings for quality jobs, and or sectors that are in transition due to the impacts of climate change. I will note that projects focused on sectors that are not listed here will also be considered. The challenge for projects outside of these groups is to present a clear justification based on labor market demand for the industry sector that you're identifying in your partnership, not listed here. So make sure you're doing that in your application if you are applying for a project that is not one of these industry sectors. And just some timelines here for the application process. Again, this is a quarterly process, a quarterly application cycle. For the current cycle, it opened up last Tuesday, January 17th. So applicants have a month. February 17th is the deadline for this current cycle. Applications must be submitted by 5 p.m. to be considered. And then again, the HRTP RWP process will run quarterly for the rest of the year. So starting on the first business day of April, July, and October, that'll be a new application cycle. And then similarly, 5 p.m. deadline on the due date of the following month in these subsequent cycles. Just want to note, this current cycle starts on January 17th, but again, we will start on the first business day of the month for subsequent cycles. So I would encourage folks who are, if you're not quite certain you'll be able to get your full application in by February 17th, it's only about 6 weeks till the April cycle reopens. So it's quite likely applicants for the January cycle will not have heard back from us on final funding decisions by the April 1st deadline. So again, April 1st might be a better bet for folks that are not certain they'll be able to get all the information to us by the February 17th deadline for the current cycle. So just something for you all to consider in the application process for this grant over the coming year. We will conduct an application review process following submittals. That typically takes us 3 to 5 weeks. Then we work with our executive team at the state board and the labor secretary to determine final funding decisions, and we will follow that up with award announcements. And again, grant term is up to 3 years for the expanding project types, 2 years for the training implementation projects, and 1 year for the planning and development projects. So sharing some additional resources here. We will try to drop these in the chat once the PowerPoint comes down here. But I strongly encourage folks who have not been on the HRTP RWP webpage to visit that as soon as possible. That's our landing page for all of the resources that we're referencing here. And we will update that information with deadlines and new information as it becomes available about the grant. But everything you need to apply can be found there right now. You'll find the request for applications document, which again, folks should be familiar with that and read through it pretty carefully before they begin their application. That includes all the guidelines, all the requirements we're looking for in the application. We've also developed an application guide, which is going to underscore and expand on a lot of the information that we're providing on this call today. That basically will help you walk through each tab in the online application, provide details and a little more context about what we're looking for in the application. And it provides basic information on just how to navigate the online application, how to complete the exhibits, and submit a application. Also on our webpage, we have a link to the application walkthrough video that Amina, who's on our call, recorded for us. This again is another detailed walkthrough of the online application. I think this will be really helpful for folks, especially anyone who hasn't gone through one of CWDB's online applications yet. This is kind of a visual aid to supplement the application guide, again, to kind of help you navigate the exhibits in the online application. Additionally, we will be posting a weekly Q&A document to the HRTP RWP webpage. Folks can submit questions at that email address there, solicitations@cwdb.ca.gov. We will respond to your questions in that weekly Q&A document. Even if you're not submitting a question, I would encourage folks to read that. Those are coming out either Thursday or Friday. I think we're still working on a posting date for those Q&As, but I think it's helpful to kind of see some of the questions that other folks are asking. We cover things that may be a little ambiguous to folks in the RFA. This is when we'll expand on any stuff, any policy type questions we'll try to address. But generally, that's a good resource for everyone. And again, if you do have questions, we'll take questions on this call today, but any questions tomorrow or throughout your application process, don't hesitate to email solicitations@cwdb, and we will answer those in the weekly Q&A posting. And then lastly, just want to give a plug to the healthcare webinar series that we've been working on in conjunction with the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. We have a webinar scheduled this week, the 26th, so that's this Thursday, which will be presenting labor market information about the healthcare industry sector. So here's a just kind of basic contact. I know you guys can't click that registration link, but for folks who are interested, we could drop that in the chat as well. All right, and that brings us through our brief little presentation there. We're going to move now to about a 10 to 15 minute walkthrough of the online application. Again, thanks to Amina for helping us with this. And again, there's also a YouTube video posted on our page, our HRTP RWP webpage, which I just mentioned, that will cover a lot of what Amina is going to cover here. So if you miss anything, highly encourage you to go back and watch that YouTube as well. So Amina, I will turn it over to you.
All right, good morning, everyone. So yeah, the walkthrough that I will be doing, it will be essentially the same thing as the video. So, but definitely if any questions anytime, please post them in the chat. And for any current questions in the chat, I do hope that this helps answer some. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm just going to minimize myself. All right, so this is the CaliGrant's homepage. This is what it'll look like when you first access the link. Keep in mind I'm in our training site, so things that I input here aren't like the real thing. So when you go ahead and log into CaliGrant, so go ahead and click on login in the upper right hand corner. If you already have an account, so let's say you've applied to previous ETP, CWDB grants, then you can just use that same login. If you are new to CaliGrants, go ahead and click on this sign up button here in the bottom right hand corner. Once you go to the sign up page, you'll input your first name, last name, email, and your company name. Once you click on sign up, it's going to send an email to your email, which you can then click and then set up a password. If you have multiple people within your company that want to access the application, just have one person sign up, and then that person can click on a manage users tab within their account to add you on. That way we can just keep your account linked with the application. Going back to the home page. And please, Mike, if you see any questions directed at me, if you could just let me know, since I'm going to keep the chat closed. So
yeah, we'll do.
Thank you. So now logging into our application, I'm going to type in my information. Once I'm logged in, we'll wait for this to load. It'll take me to the Welcome to CaliGrants homepage. To access the funding opportunities, you'll click on this Funding Opportunities tab, or you can click on CWDB down here on the bottom. So I'll click on Funding Opportunities. So this is when I'm starting a new application. In this drop-down arrow, it might default to recently viewed. In order to view this particular grant, you'll just click on this drop-down arrow, go to CWDB Funding Opportunities, and then you can pin this list view. So once you see this pinned down, that means that every time you open this, it'll go to CWDB Funding Opportunities. You can open and expand these fields. So just like how I did now, because I wanted to see which funding opportunities I'm clicking on, it'll say the title, the due date if there is one, the agency name, the status, and then the requested funding available. Scrolling over, I'm going to click on the High Road Training Partnership Resilient Workforce Program, or RWP. If you go on this funding opportunity, you'll see as you scroll down various information, description, just kind of describing what this is. These blue texts are going to be clickable links. So if you click on that, it's going to take you to this web page. So every time you see that blue text, you can click on that for further information. There's a project goal, available funding, the priority industries, eligible applicants, and also right here, this will show your current applications that are either in progress or submitted. So as you can see, I have 2 that I already submitted. Going back up. And this is all available for your review too. When you're going to start the application, you'll click on this apply button right here in the upper right-hand corner. You'll then be able to select your application category. So I'm just going to click on our HRTP RWP implementation. I'll click on next. Let me zoom out a bit from this. From there, you're going to see this page where you're putting your basic information in. So you'll put your project name. So I'm just going to put CWDB test project. From here, you'll then select your industry. So you'll see these little arrows. What you do is you click on what you want to add. You'll click on the right-hand arrow, and then you'll choose that. If you accidentally choose the wrong thing, such as construction in this example, you'll click on construction and just click on that left arrow to deselect it. From here, you'll put in your requested amount. So I'm just going to put in 10,000. You can put in your cash or in-kind match. We have one. And if you have any questions, you can hover over this I button. And what that tells you is essentially what you can do with that box. So if I hover over it, you'll see there's a little help bubble. Next, in my location, I'm going to type in my address. I'll just be inputting test for this because it's quicker for me to type. Zip code. Points of contact will be inputted here. So your primary contact, your physical contact. And again, I go over all of this in a video. So if I'm going too fast or anything right now, you'll be able to go through that video and go slower if need be. And that is not posted yet, so we'll provide you a link for that at the end. Once you're done inputting all your information, you'll click on Save. Anything denoted with a red asterisk is going to be a required field, and if you don't fill it out, it'll just prompt you to fill it out. Once we click on Save, you'll get the screen pop-up message. Your application was created successfully, and it'll take you to your application. If you scroll down, your cover page is going to be everything that you just filled in on that previous page. So all of this general information. If you made an error at any point, you can just click on this pencil icon, make your edit as needed, then go down and click on Save. And you'll have updated that information. So no worries, if you make any mistakes, you can just edit it. These are the various tabs. If you, for some reason, aren't seeing these tabs, please let us know so we can fix that for you. As you go through the tabs, such as the narratives, you'll notice that to display the narrative, you must accept the acknowledgement. What that acknowledgement is if you go back to the cover page, it's going to be this message here at the top. And then you're just going to go ahead and click on I agree if you want to proceed with the application. Confirm, and you'll get that green pop-up message again. Once that loads, you can then proceed to your narratives. You can see that there's a 3,000 character limit per narrative question. And what that means is you're not including it's including your letters, your punctuation, your spacing. That's all included within this 3,000 character limit. So what I recommend is you can maybe, if you're typing this up in a Word document or whatnot, you can just check your character limit there. But also the system won't allow you to save over that. So you'll notice that you'll be cut off at that 3,000 limit. As you're filling out these sections, so I'm going to be inputting test again, because these are all required fields, so I'm not allowed to proceed without filling in the information. You'll notice section 1 is 30% of the narrative. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill these in. I'm not going to go through the questions one by one, just because you will also be able to view these. But if you have any questions about these particular questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So to continue scrolling down and putting my test. Note that this question is optional. So just as I go through this, just give me a moment as I fill these out. So overall, you'll notice there are 20 questions, 19 not including the optional one for section 1. For section 2, this is partnership. This accounts for 25%. I'm going to go ahead and fill out my test for these. Note on question 4, you'll notice similar to when you were filling out the cover page, these selectable questions. You can hover over this for a description on how to select and deselect. So to select, you'll simply click on what you want. Click on that right arrow to select it. And if you don't want it, you'll click on it and click on that left arrow to unselect it. As you select questions, note that additional pop-up questions are appearing. So I selected labor management partnership, and so there is a follow-up on, please describe labor management partnership. Just bear with me as I go through this. And note then there are 12 questions for section 2. For section 3, this is the program measures of success and outcomes. This accounts for 25%. And then your last section is going to be the deliverables, budget, and work plan. So it tells you to complete the outcomes in the deliverables tab, work plan, and budget documents. So there's nothing to fill in on a narrative for section 4, but you will complete this with the tabs at the top. So I'm going to go back to the top. Once I've finished filling out the narratives, I want to click on save. It's really important that you click on save for each tab just so that you don't lose your information. And you'll know that you saved because you got that green pop-up message. Once you're satisfied with the narratives, we'll go to outcomes and deliverables. At the top of every page, there's going to be a bit of a description for what you need to fill out. There's that 500 character limit. So like I said before, that includes letters, punctuation, spacing, etc. I'm going to put in my test in here. If I want to add more fields, I'll just click on the add button, and I can also trash can, click on the trash can icon if I want to delete that field. Once I'm done with that, I'll click on save. Once I get that green pop-up message, I know I'm done. For work plan, you'll have that information at the top, just kind of clarifying what you need to put for this. You'll notice that you have multiple quarters. To input into the quarter, you have to click on this add button, then you can put in your text. As you click on estimated completion dates, it's going to pop up a calendar for you. You can click on this year right here to select what year you want to be in or for your quarter. You'll click on, so I'll just click on January 1st, 2018. That's obviously not realistic, but just for this purpose, I'll click on that. We'll do save. And same with the next quarters is you can just add as needed. Note that you can't save if you leave it blank. So if you decide that you don't need quarter 2, you'll have to click on that trash can icon. And then that'll be able to save it then successfully. Going to our participant plan. So this participant plan, you're only seeing this if on the cover page. So let me just go back to that real quick. You selected is a project serving participants. So for this, actually for this project, that's not a question, but you'll notice for the other RWP application types that there will be a question asking if you are serving participants. And if you select yes, that will then populate this numbering for the quarters. As you fill in these quarters, so if let's say I put in 10 for enrolled in training, you're going to notice that it's going to be totaling here at the end, and that's totaling by itself. So as you put in your numbers, it's adding it for you. Scrolling down, it's going to be the same process for all of these. And then there's also a section to provide your details on desired placement outcomes. So fill in the ones that you need. All of these won't be required, so just fill in, like I said, again, as you need. Once we're done with this, we'll click on that save button and we'll proceed to partner R&R. For partner R&R at the top, you'll have that further information on what is needed from you. As you scroll down for your list partners, not all of these are required, but the ones that are required will be employer/industry and labor or worker representative. You'll simply click on the add button to begin entering your information. Enter your leveraged amount if applicable. The type. You have a formal or planned, and then you can either delete that if needed, or you can add more if needed. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. And you'll notice at the bottom it totals. Scrolling up, we'll click on save. You'll get that green pop-up message, and that's when you know you can proceed. For the funding and expenditure plan, you'll notice that you have 2 sections with it totaling right here at the bottom. So something about this this section is that your section 1 and your section 2, this total subgrant amount is going to need a match. So by that, what I mean is, let's say, for example, I'm putting in a 10,000 right here, 10,000 right here. I'm saving that. It's going to give me an error message saying my grant funds do not equal my total quarterly planned expenditures. What that means if I scroll down is it's going to be highlighted in red that those need to match. So you won't be doing it like me where I'm just putting in the numbers to match, but you'll be making sure that everything that you're inputting does. match. As I click on save, I'll get that green success message, and then I can move on to the budget narrative. That total subgrant amount that you inputted into your expend plan, that's going to be the same number that your budget narrative needs to equal to. So if I scroll down the budget narrative here at the bottom, this award amount will equal that. So for me, I had put 10,000. So my grant award total here should also equal 10,000. And notice again, these blue texts. So those are all links. So if you need further information and clarification, you can click on them. As you go through this, note this top here where it gives you some further clarification on the budget narrative. You'll go ahead and type in your information as needed if you have any staff salaries and benefits. For each of these sections, if they are not applicable to you, just go ahead and leave it blank. If you put NA right here, it's not going to let you save it if you have a 0. So just leave it blank if it's not applicable. So I'm just going to be inputting my test here. And I'm going to be putting in my number, the total subgrant amount that I used in these tabs, so I can just show you what I mean by the matching numbers. So you'll see at the bottom, that's depicted here in my total. I'll go back to the top and I'll click on save. Then once I get that green success message, I know I can move on to my supplemental budget. For your supplemental budget, this one will not have to equal this 10,000 figure or my total subgrant amount that I was using in this previous tabs. You'll see further clarification of what is required for you here at the top. So section 1 will be equipment. So you'll just, like before, put in your information as needed. And it's going to calculate for you here at the bottom. Add as needed, delete as needed. You can access these links as needed for further clarification. And it's just going to be the same process. Note that for the supplemental budget, each of your sections has its own individual save button. So you'll see section 1 has a save, section 2 has its own save, and section 3 has its own save. So ensure that you click 3 times there if you are filling out that information. Once you're completed with your supplemental budget, please click on this More button so you can expand the fields. So you can see we already completed these, but since this is just a small screen, it's not showing up. If I zoom out, you're going to be able to see all those tabs without having to click on that More button. Let me just zoom back in for our viewing purposes. And now our last section is going to be this Upload Documents field. So we have 3 documents that we can input here. We have the MOU or Letter of Support, STD 204, and STD 205 if applicable. If at all you need to add new documents, so more than these 3 that are listed here, you'll click on this new icon. You can name your document, select its format, put any other comments that you may have, and just click on Save. And what that does then is it just makes a new field for you. Scrolling back to the top, so I did see a question about if you're going to be able to view this application like in a print view. And so you'll notice that we have 3 buttons right here. If I click on print view, what this does is it opens up my application in a new tab. So we'll just let that load. It's a lot of information. And so this is going to show you a preview of everything that you just inputted. You can either look at it like this on your desktop, or you can right click it, click on print, or however you want to print. This is just my way I'm doing it. And then your destination here, versus having your printer type, click on Save as PDF, and then click on Save, and then that'll save it to your desktop. And then from there, you can print it, you can view it online, whatever you want. But if you want to submit your application, you will have to do it through our portal. So this is just purely for your convenience. So my scroll bar is in the way. There we go. Going back to my application. So if I feel that I am completed with this, or I haven't made any errors, I'm going to click on the Submit tab. I'm going to try and delete a couple fields for you, just so I can show you what it looks like if you have an error. And so it's allowed me to save. So I go to my Submit tab. It's going to ask me, are you sure? Do you want to submit the application? I'll click on yes. And since I didn't fill out some fields, it's going to give me these error messages. So if I scroll down, it'll say it's because I haven't filled out my narrative. It'll tell me where specifically. You can see that in my budget summary, it's going to tell me what the issue was. And for my documents, the upload documents I need to submit. So I'll go back. I'll make those corrections. My other error was in my budget summary. So you can see for my budget summary, this is a tab that I missed. So it's good that we have those errors. This is going to be the same as with your budget narrative, but it equals that 10,000 from that total subgrant amount. So if I'm typing in my numbers, I'm going to put my 10,000 in. So again, this is just a number that I'm using, not one that's reflective of what you need. As you scroll down, in my total award, it's going to show that 10,000 figure. If there are any administrative costs, it'll deduct from here, and then it'll give me my total amount. As I scroll back to the top, I'll click on Save. I'll get that green success message. And now we know our next error is in the documents. If we want to be reminded of what that is, we can just click on that Submit button again, and it's going to tell us like, hey, you forgot your documents. So go back to the documents. You'll click on Upload Files. You'll click on the document you want to add. So I'll just add this one for a test. You'll let it upload. You'll get that green check mark once it's completed. If you want to delete it, you can click the trash can icon. If you want to download it, you can click on this arrow going down into this line. And I'll select one more document to fill out my STD204 section. And once that is done, I can click on Submit. Now you can also click on Delete if you decide you don't want this application, but I'm just going to click on Submit. And there you go. You'll get a notice that your application is submitted successfully. It'll reload for you. And then in your status bar, instead of application in progress, it will have updated to application submitted. So this status bar is going to be a good way for you to monitor your application throughout the process. So if you get accepted, if you get rewarded this grant, for example, you'll get eventually award in progress while it's being reviewed. It'll change status, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one more feature that I want to show you before I hand this back off to CWDB staff is this Manage Users tab. If you go onto Manage Users, so if I just created my account, but let's say, oh, I want so-and-so to be able to log on and view the application that I made. So instead of them creating a new account through that process that I showed you in the beginning, you would have to, or whoever is the administrator, have to go in and click on Add a New User, type in their name, their email, their phone number, and their permissions. The difference with the permissions will be between administrator and user. So administrator, that will be who is adding these new users. They're able to add new users, they're able to delete the application, things like that. And so user, they're still able to edit, it just kind of limits them a little bit more. So once you create them, so I've already used this, so I'll just do this. Once you've created the new user, this person will be getting an email to their email, prompting them to set up their account. And lastly, just if you want to view your applications, if you click on the Applications tab here, it'll show you everything that you have submitted or in progress, etc. And so that's it from my end. I'm going to take it back to CWDB. And please, if any questions, just pop them in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Amina. Okay, so at this point, we're open to questions. If folks want to use the hand raise feature to just ask questions over the call, feel free to start doing so. Also been answering questions in the chat as well. And I apologize, I think Monique and Cheney have been monitoring the chat and I've been kind of jumping in and answering them. So this call is much larger than our typical application webinars. I think this might set the record for attendance. So we're trying to get to your questions as they come in. But if you didn't see a response to your question in the chat, feel free to just raise your hand and we can answer it over the call. Before we jump to the folks with their hands raised, we've gotten a couple questions about like, is there an offline version of the application or like something you could fill out like outside of the online app? Short answer is no, we don't have anything like that. However, the online application does have a print view feature, where you will have to complete your cover page and actually get into your application. But at that point, there's a print view button that will generate a PDF of the full application. So that's been helpful for a lot of folks in the past to just kind of get a sense of all the information that'll need to be entered into the online system. I also want to kick a couple questions over to Shan and Danielle. We've gotten a question about funding targeting high school students. And I know, I'm hoping you guys could clarify on if there are any additional requirements to serving high school students.
Mike, on the RFA, did we have a age limit on the target population? Because I know sometimes we have like a footnote on the target population.
Yeah, good question. Let me.
I have
pull
the
that up.
RFA up and I am looking right now. I know there's some instances with some of our grant programs where they have to be out of school. So in the current RFA, a youth is an individual that meets the criteria for WIOA eligible out of school youth ages 18 to 24. So we are going with out of school youth definition, not in school youth. We can provide more information, but there are links and everything in the RFA. But that would be the definition. I'll put that in the chat too.
Thanks, Danielle. All right, then let's just go to the hands now. Felicia, I think you've had yours raised the longest, so go ahead, Felicia.
Thanks, Mike, and thank you all for a great presentation. Very, very helpful, especially the quick view of the app. Thank you for that. My question is around who is eligible to be the fiduciary lead or the lead applicant. When you look at the language that's in the RFA, it's a little squishy. And so we're just looking for some reassurance that an employer can in fact be the lead applicant, or a definitive no, they cannot be a lead applicant. Thank you.
Yeah, so that question came up in the Q&A document that we're posting on Friday. Let me just pull that up really quick and I can let you know what we're responding there. I mean, the short answer is we'd prefer fiscal agents that have worked, kind of handled this type of program before and that are able to act in the capacity as the lead fiscal agent. And I'll just read verbatim our response to this question. Whoever's the fiscal agent should identify appropriately. If an employer applies on behalf of a partnership, that would be considered an employer or employer association. If a labor organization is applying and plans to manage the grant, that would be a labor organization. The fiscal agent should be the entity that can best oversee all grant administration. So we'd be looking for grant and contract management experience. Just an entity that can ensure grant compliance, an entity that's able to convene all partners and report on partnership efforts and outcomes throughout the grant term.
So if an employer like the state of California does have experience with those things that you just listed, then the employer can in fact be the fiduciary lead and lead applicant.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Randy, you're next up in our hand raised queue. Looks like you're on mute, Randy.
Okay, thanks. This seminar is great, and this whole initiative is just amazing, as I'm sure everyone on here feels. I have two questions. The first is actually to Amina. On that chart where you have to put how many participants are in quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, problem is when you have a program that goes like, say, for a year, and you put that 10 in quarter one, you put it again in quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, it adds up cumulatively. It sounds like you have 40 people. Sorry, but it's because it's a cumulative thing. So how do we, and so then it ends up looking like you're serving thousands of people instead of hundreds. So how do we use that chart and avoid this problem when you have programs that go beyond a quarter?
Amina, I'll jump in front of you to answer that one. And I usually ask Chan because Chan's more eloquent in how she describes the participant plan exhibit.
Amina, can you pull up the participant plan? I know we made some changes to the participant plan for this cohort. Are you able to pull it up so that I can look at it as I'm describing it?
1 second.
So we did make some changes to the participant plan, so it shouldn't look like the participant plan that we used to have it for the previous cohort. So let's see if that's been made. In this version, I don't think it should be adding cumulatively.
In the
Or like-
demonstration, it did. That's why
I think it still will add cumulatively.
Okay, so how it has is you're just going to be adding it per a quarter, and then it's just going to total up. It looks like it's not. If you've seen the previous one, it has like 4 columns under program enrollment, and then you would see like, you know, even though you're enrolling like 90 participants for, you know, 12 quarter, you end up with a few hundred. It's not showing up like that because there isn't a cumulative row. There is a column for total, but there isn't a cumulative like in the previous one.
Well, but like where it says enrolled in training. So if you type in Q2, if you type in 10, and it's the same 10 that were enrolled in Q1, the total will go to 20.
So you don't do that. You only, the quarter, you would only count them as a unique numbers. If you already counted them in Q1, then you wouldn't count them for Q2.
Oh, perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Okay, great. So you count them when they enter the program.
Yes,
basically.
yeah.
And you count them when they graduate. That's the month that that's the quarter they graduate.
Yes, yes. So
Got
you
it.
would only count them once. Whenever you enroll them, you count them in that quarter. Whenever they completed the training, you count them in that quarter.
Perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. And Mike, can I ask one other question?
Yes, go ahead.
So hypothetically, if there was a statewide intermediary who supports apprenticeship programs across the state, but 1 or 2 of their programs are huge programs at this point that manage their own 100+ apprentices each year, could we submit a proposal where we're focusing on the RAPs that we're working with who are either emerging or just launched or still in the planning stage, and let that the large conglomerate of apprenticeships, you know, within this one RAPs network, do their own proposal? Or should we embed them and just make our proposal larger?
Yeah, I think given the new structure of this grant, kind of segmenting it out between, you know, projects that are more in the planning stage, kind of in the earlier stage, might make sense to have that be their own proposal and then separate out like the more mature programs that do have that sort of like, you know, time-tested approach that is already being implemented. That would be, you know, you would apply for those as a training or an expanding project. It's really up to you to kind of determine like what would make sense structurally within the framework of this RFA.
Okay, all right. But so, okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
I was going to say too, if this is helpful, one of the reasons that we kind of did these different categories this time too is because so much of this work sometimes is development and planning and figuring out, you know, it's just so dependent on so many different partners and scenarios. And we were having everyone do everything in one grant program, and they weren't able to get to a point of implementation. And then we didn't want to make it look like they weren't successful, because they were, but they were just so heavy on the development. And it's just if one thing happens, right? And so, yeah, if you're ready for implementation, that's one thing. But if it's, you know, so much of your implementation is dependent on development planning, that's kind of why we separated them now.
Yep, great. Thank you.
All right. Cindy, go ahead. I see your hand's been raised.
Okay. Hi there. I have a few questions. So one is,
the solicitation for the medical grant is being done, this is just all being done under the HRTP grant. And so is there a separate, I guess, awarding being done for medical grants versus the other industry sectors? That's my first question. Or is this just all encompassing one RFP, pick which industry you want, and we're all competing together?
Yes, so there is, as of the previous budget that was passed in 2022, so for the 22-23 fiscal year, there is a designated funding stream for Health and Human Services HRTPs. Those applications, so I know we've had sort of a parallel track of some webinars that have addressed healthcare HRTPs in particular. But in terms of the application and the entire sort of grant cycle, those will still fall under the umbrella of HRTP RWP. So the application process will be the same. That's one of the reasons why we've included the multiple sections in the application for applicants to identify their industry sector, because that'll help us parse out the healthcare applications as we look at awarding those. So same process for the healthcare projects.
Same deadline, everything, but you're going to separate those out, I guess, and award. I mean, is there a separate amount that you're going to award in the healthcare industry, or?
No, I would just look at the project types. The project types listed in the RFA, those are applicable to healthcare just as they are to the other industry sectors. So healthcare, it's in no way a separate solicitation or a separate RFA. All of the information in the RFA will apply to healthcare projects. So due dates are the same, award ranges are the same, grant requirements are the same.
So there's not a separate amount of money that's being set aside for the healthcare industry?
There is. So HRTP is funded through a number of different funding streams, and the legislature has certain specifications based on funding streams. Some are designated for climate related projects, but healthcare is the newest bucket of funding that's available for HRTP, and those funds are designated specifically to healthcare applicants.
Okay. And then I'm trying to figure out, whether or not we would come under the implementation or the expansion. I mean, certainly there's a higher threshold on the expansion, and the 36 months is very attractive, especially if we're dealing with some healthcare occupations such as RN that, require a 2-year program. So I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail on whether or not, how you qualify under the expansion. We currently have strong partnerships with our community college and our adult ed providers, and we sponsor numerous people and, kind of a vast array of some health careers. And we want to, we'd applied for the Good Jobs Challenge, we weren't funded for that. So, we already have kind of a framework and occupations in mind that we want to expand. I also have a couple of providers that want to do some training that they had not done in the past. Would that qualify as an expansion if we are just, taking occupations that we've currently been funding? We've been funding the whole training. We do them under an ITA, under the ETPL, provider list. They've been providers, but they want to add additional cohorts, that they can't afford to do with their own funding. So would those partnerships qualify as an expansion under this grant? That's my question.
Yeah, so the way we view the project types is sort of a progression. So there's the planning, which is, again, like a it's planning. It's generally there's an opportunity for planning grants to train participants, but generally we view that as the project type where a partnership is still being developed. All the partners are there, but there isn't a definitive training plan yet. Training implementation is when that planning process actually turns into training participants. And then the expanding is building on the training project type. So I would encourage you to look at the RFA and application guide for like the full description of the expanding project type. The description refers to the 4 high road elements. So we would be looking for projects that meet all 4 of those elements, where there's already been training that's taking place, and there's a clear partnership, and an expanding project would be building on that, expanding either the number of participants served, expanding into an adjacent industry sector, or expanding the geographic reach of a program. So we're not really able to like kind of tell you which one to apply for. If there's specific questions about some of the information in the description in the RFA or the application guide about what an expanding project is, we can speak to that, but it's really sort of incumbent on applicants to just read through the RFA and the requirements. And if you feel that your project meets those requirements, then you know, that would be up to you to select.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know how, you know, can you combine, I guess, expanding existing projects and also adding new ones into that same RFA?
Yeah, it's possible. I think that does sound a bit like it would be an expanding, if there's already training taking place, and then a project would be looking to expand on that training to new partners, or you know, you're adding employer partners, you're increasing the number of participants served. Okay. That would sort of meet some of the criteria of an expanding project.
Okay.
And I'll also add to, like, if you apply for, you know, say the training implementation, that kind of puts you on a pathway to continue to, you know, that puts you in the HRTP space, and kind of positions you to move into an expanding project after the grant term of your training implementation project. So, you know, our hope is that HRTP will continue to be as well funded as it currently is, and that, you know, you'll enter in at a certain point on this 3 project type progression, and then continue to build on your project, and, you know, move to a position where, you know, if you say don't have all the requirements of an expanding project, you know, you kind of get in the door as a training project, demonstrate the efficacy of your program, and then later on would be situated to apply as an expanding project.
Okay, but you can also just apply as an expanding project, even though you didn't have a prior HRTP grant.
Correct.
Yeah.
Prior HRTPs, I think, are generally a little better positioned because they sort of have some of the tested infrastructure that we're looking for, but it's not a requirement that to come in as an expanding project. You don't have to be an existing HRTP.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Again, feel free to raise your hand. I think I'm just going to go through the chat and read some of these questions out. I see J.O. has a question about participants in prison. That's something I'd like to go back and discuss internally to determine how we would assess a proposal like that. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I can go back and get something. We could put that in the Q&A. Jo also asked, can we purchase training software and tablets, laptops for participants with the funding? Yes, that is an allowable cost. Kelly asks, can funds be used for site improvements, for example, new training and equipment spaces? Potentially, the only caveat being that funds cannot pay for real property. So it would kind of depend on the details there. And if you have a follow-up question, feel free to drop that in the chat or just raise your hand, Kelly. Marie asks, is there any requirements around data being entered into CalJobs for training participants in this grant if awarded? No, we do not plan on using CalJobs for participant outcome data for this, for HRTP, RWP. More information to come on data reporting. We will provide, we'll provide more detailed instructions to applicants who are awarded about participant data collection. So kind of a half answer for you, but no CalJobs for HRTP, RWP. Lexi asks, can we apply to work with multiple industries at the same time? Yes, you can. The online application will allow for selecting multiple industry sectors. Dr. Sims asks for training and equipment spaces to install projectors, screens, AV equipment. I do believe that is an allowable cost. And Chan, if you're still on, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe we would allow that.
I believe so. But do note that once you put the expense on the budgets tab, when the staff go in and review them, you may be asked to submit additional information on that expense. So be aware of that.
Thanks, Jen. Kelly asks, what is the idea or intent to include the community colleges, including non-credit or adult education in these solicitations, or are there examples? Kelly, if you could just help us out and expand on that a little bit. I mean, I think just in general, we view community colleges and adult ed partners as, you know, very, very much beneficial to HRTPs. You know, they provide some of the career advancement and career prep that is really important to the training that we would like to see in the HRTP projects that we fund. So if you have like a more specific question beyond that, would be happy to expand.
I guess, hi, this is Kelly. I'm calling from San Diego College of Continuing Education, and we're in the San Diego Central Region Adult Education Consortium. So it's adult ed, but we're non-credit community college. So I guess, and I might be getting a little confused. There's kind of two pieces of this, is that we have heard several times from the California Department of Education, from the Adult Education Division, that there is an allocation for healthcare careers coming from the state, and there's a lot of encouragement to have the adult education system included in that, because we have a lot of programming typically for English language learners. And so just around equity and representation within the healthcare industry. I don't know if the High Roads funding is where those funds are coming from. So that's kind of a piece of it. But then without you telling us, you know, a design, but I'm wondering if there's examples of how non-credit community colleges may have partnered in other pathway solicitations that we're seeing as best practices, because obviously we're a part of the workforce system, but we're not funded by the workforce system, where we owe it to. But I think there's a lot of connections, but I think I wanted some background of like what's been done that's a promising practice, and like what is the idea about the connections with the community college system. So if that makes sense at all. I don't know if it does.
Yeah, I'll try to tackle that. And Nick, who's on the call, maybe, I don't know to what extent our existing HRT portfolio includes any healthcare projects, but I know we do have a list of all our existing projects on our the HRTP page of our website. And then I'd also just give another plug to the healthcare webinar that is taking place this Thursday. And you can reach out to us for that information if you don't have that already. But in terms of the funding availability, I know there was a big package in last year's budget that dealt with healthcare workforce training. That funding went, some of it went to the HRTP healthcare project fund, which we've talked about a little bit here. But that's not the only place where that healthcare funding went. And unfortunately, I can't really speak to the other places, the other agencies and other places in the state that healthcare funding went. But I do think that the healthcare package was a bigger piece than what's being funded through HRTP. There are other sources for that. And I want to say the community colleges did receive some funding there, but I honestly can't give you solid information on that right now. Nick, anything to add on that?
I'd be happy to get back to the group on that. Paul is one of the subject matter experts with the healthcare piece of HRTP, as well as my colleague Tanya Burks. So I don't know if you want to chime in on that one, Paul, or if we'll just get back to the group with a more complete answer on that.
Thanks, Cheney. So Kelly, Cheney just dropped some information for that webinar in the chat. Also, if you want to send us an email to solicitations@cwdb.ca.gov, we can try to do some digging and answer your questions about funding availability. We're not necessarily experts in funding that's not coming to the workforce board, but we can do some digging and try to point you in the right direction. And then Jesse just posted a link to our page that lists all the existing high road training partnerships as well. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Elizabeth, I see your hand raised, so go ahead.
Thank you. So I am supporting the College of Instrument Technology here in Southern California and in Bellflower, but we have our training module in the city of Long Beach, actually on the water department's site. And so our training, we're non-accredited site. It is for adults. We train unemployed, those coming out of incarceration, homeless, justice involved, hazed, have a 96% graduate rate. Most of our graduates go into very high paying positions, wonderful placement. We're currently doing the work. We have contracts with the WIB. We're trying to figure out how we fit because our sectors are construction, manufacturing, and even some in the forestry as we partner with the California Conservation Corps and training some of their youth, the TAs. So we're trying to see if we take the lead because we already have the partnerships. We have formalized partnerships, but putting it into this, whether we're already in the implementation stage, we know that we provide training. We know that our students and graduates are going into these sectors. We know that those sectors are being compelled to reduce the carbon footprint and deal with climate change. And so we're like, okay, so how is it that we pull it together? We know that we can expand and train more students. We already support the water department with training some of their employees. So, we're just trying to wrap our brains around how is it that we can utilize the funding and do what we currently do, which we do well, and pull together our partners and utilize this funding to do more. And I know we can articulate the story. It's just, how do we fit in the niche? Do we fit in the niche of the implementation? Do we fit in the niche of the expansion? Can we be the lead? So can, we're just looking for some direction, okay?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that, and I'll also kind of give the company line of encouraging you to just kind of read through the solicitation and all our materials that are out there, because that might help kind of crystallize some of the ideas in terms of like where you would fit within the project type categories and all that. But I mean, it sounds like the key in terms of like the key partners at the table, you know, we're looking for at least one employer partner, ideally, you know, multiple employer partners, worker representation. So that can be labor organizations, you know, any type of entity that convenes workers, and then a training provider. So it sounds like
so
those three elements are
we're
there.
the trainer provider. We are the training provider. We have several employers, Marcia, that we have several employers that we deal with. Marcia. So for instance,
The CRSP, SC Fuels, Expo Sand and Gravel. Several crane companies, because we train for crane operators also, etc.
And then Pacific Gateway is one of the WIBs that we work with. South Bay is one of the WIBs that we work with. City of Long Beach Water. So now you're saying we need to focus on another partner that would be more of a union or something like that in terms of labor?
Yes, some sort of employer representation is a key component of an HRTP.
Okay.
That's something we would look for in an application. But yeah, and I'll give another plug to our field team for folks who are kind of like maybe one step before the application process. You know, need some like additional support to help sort of determine how they could piece together an HRTP. Our field staff does have some capacity to kind of provide some additional direction there.
Okay. The field, so we're going to reach out to them. Okay. Do you have a specific person or something that we should touch base with?
I can put my chat. I can put my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to help you, Elizabeth.
Okay. Thank you so much. Your name?
Nick Esquivel.
Oh, Nick. Thank you so much, Nick.
You're
We're going to
welcome.
reach out to you this week or next week. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for you.
Just going back to the chat here. Can stipends be covered for pre-apprentices who can't be hired at the start because they don't have the entry-level requirements? Chan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe stipends for pre-apprentices would be an allowable cost.
Yes, if they are participant that you enroll and provide services to under the grant program.
Thanks. All right, and Yvonne asks, is it possible for a fiscal agent intermediary to be awarded a planning grant if applied by February 17th and awarded an implementation grant if applied by April deadline for the next quarter? Yvonne, could you just clarify on that? Trying to make sure I give you the correct answer to your question. Yvonne Rebus.
Yes, here I am. Thank you so much for taking my question. The reason why we asked that question is because we are deep in planning and all of our partners are already doing the work. It's pretty much about putting the RAP in motion, you know, to register it. And so we are very close to implementing as a RAP program with all of the partners already doing the work. So it's a matter of submitting the application. So we're wondering if we catch the February 17th application deadline for planning, and then the April deadline for implementation, is it possible for us to be awarded like in 2 consecutive quarters like this?
It's not impossible, but I don't think we've done that, and we generally. So I'll reiterate what I mentioned earlier in our call today. It's highly unlikely we'll have made award decisions by the time the April application cycle opens up. So it may make more sense to, if you're applying in February, wait until the July cycle, so you have a little more clarity. And we will, even for applications that don't make the cut in January, our field staff is available to provide input to folks who, did not get funded in that cycle. So I would encourage that. That's by no means a requirement. You can apply, you could send in an application for each cycle if you want to take a shot at it. But yeah, I mean, I think the lift there would be demonstrating what the 2 projects were doing. Like if they're doing similar work, it might be a tougher ask. If they're 2 completely different projects and the same organization is running them, that's a different story. That has happened in the past where there's been a single entity operating more than one HRTP.
Got it. So yeah, your response helps me think about it because it is the same RAP with 4 chapters of basically instructional sites and their corresponding school districts and the university partners and all those things. So it would be the same group of people if we apply for a planning grant, although as you were speaking, I was thinking perhaps because we're already starting the work, shall we just wait to apply for an implementation grant for April?
Yeah, it's totally up to you. Again, just highly encourage everyone to read what the requirements of the different project types are. If you feel that your project might be a better fit as a training implementation versus a planning grant, if the training is ready to happen and all the partners are in place, but you may not be able to get the application ready for February, April may be a better option for you, but totally up to you. We're not necessarily in the business of providing guidance on when you should apply or which project type you should apply for. But, kind of use your best judgment because the criteria will score the applications on it'll depend on the project type. So, yeah, having the partnership commitments in place is also a big piece of what we look for.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Jessica asks, for apprenticeship, can initial entry union dues be paid on behalf of a trainee who's entering a union job? Chan, I believe that would also be allowable, correct?
Yes.
And then similar question from Dr. Sims, can funding be used for tuition and scholarships? I think the answer is yes to that as well. Can you speak to whether this healthcare funding stream is one of the areas the governor proposed for delay in the first iteration of the 23-24 budget? So there is funding for 2023 that is available for the state board to spend down. I don't want to do any projections on the current governor's budget because I think there's still a lot of, that stuff will develop going into the May revise and then into the summer. So, any funding beyond 2023, I guess, is technically up in the air, but the state board does have funding available to fund healthcare projects in this current HRTP RWP cycle. Dr. Sims asks about scheduling a Zoom call with an employment specialist to answer specialized questions that are unique to an institution. I think if the questions are related to your HRTP application, we would encourage you to submit those through the solicitations inbox, so this can be posted to the FAQ. Because this is a competitive solicitation process, we're not able to really provide much direction in terms of what you should include in your application, but we can respond to questions about your institution and about the program in general, and we could point you to resources that may help you kind of better understand how you may want to frame some of your responses in your application. So again, would strongly recommend reaching out to the solicitations at cwdb.ca.gov inbox for any questions. And again, I mentioned it in a previous response, we do have a field team that is available to work with folks that are interested in forming a high road training partnership. We just kind of want to make sure that we're not crossing the line into actually advising applicants on how to respond to the questions in the application. All right. Marianne asks, so then are you using WIOA definitions for stipends? Shan, do we generally use WIOA as our definitions for stipends?
If we don't have a state policy, we can put this on the FAQ, I think, Mike, to see. I know we had a recent internal discussion about this. Usually if we don't have, a state policy, we do defer to the WIOA guidelines. So this is something we can confirm with our executive leader, and then we'll provide that. But usually, an incentive or a stipend is, for participants with a possible outcome, with the outcome for the grant program. So, if you enroll a participant and they go into some sort of training and they get a job, and during that training, they, need stipends or encouragement to complete it, then, that's something that is allowable, but we can double check with executive leadership to and confirm if we are defaulting stipend to the WIOA definition, since we don't have a state guidelines for it.
Thanks, Jan. We are at time, but I'll go through the remaining questions in the chat, and then again, for folks who may have additional questions or questions come up after our call today, just drop us a line again at solicitations@cwdb.ca.gov. Any questions you ask us there, we will include in our Q&A document that we'll be posting weekly while the application is open, and then we will still continue to respond to questions after the application is closed on a monthly basis, and then we'll resume a weekly posting when the April application opens up. So I want to address Cindy's question. This is a good question, actually. I wanted to touch on this. What is your estimated date for actual contracts to be awarded for the February applications? For the purposes of the application, since there are some budget and participant plan sections that ask for information on a quarterly basis, please use July 1st, 2023 as your start date for those. That's not a guarantee that contracts will be awarded by then, but we will make any modifications during the after we've identified award decisions. We'll work with grantees on making updates to those exhibits to reflect the actual start date. But again, please use July 1st as your start date in the application.
So Mike, what would the anticipated start date be for the April and July rounds? Like roughly a quarter later?
Yeah, it's honestly, we still rely on EDD to execute our contracts, and that does that process. EDD gives us a 4 to 6 month window for the contract execution timeline. So those tend to be a little tricky for us to really pin down this far out. But yeah, when the April and July applications roll around, we'll provide, we'll give guidance on when applicants should, what start date they should use in their application. But I don't even want to put dates out on for those yet, because there are a lot of moving pieces that are tough to